Hello guys, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another episode in the 5 Minute Friday series, and in this episode we're going to be looking at media queries and how they can help us make our projects responsive. So just a quick history introduction before we get started. In the past, building a website was much more simpler because there was only a couple of screen sizes for websites to fit in. However, because of the technological advancements of the modern day, website layouts now should be adapted not only to computers but to tables, mobile devices and even TVs. Now this is what you'd call responsive web design, and using CSS media queries are one of the most important parts of responsive web design. Now with that all out of the way, what are media queries? Now a media query is just a CSS technique which was introduced in CSS 3, and what it does is just allow us to adjust the display and orientation of content by creating new CSS rules. So now let's take a look at the syntax of a media query. Now the syntax of a media query looks a little something like this. Don't be worried by any of this at the moment, we will be going over these steps. So the first step is always to write the media rule or @media rule, followed by a media type, and there's going to be a number of categories which we will go over. Then followed by parentheses, which you set out your conditions, and we will go over a couple of the more common conditions. And then the curly braces, in which you insert your new CSS rules. So let's dive into VS Code now and look at these parts one by one. So we're inside VS Code, and I've got a basic document layout with a heading and a paragraph, and in the browser here you can see I've opened up the toggle device, which is going to help us demonstrate how media queries work. So let's head into the style sheet, and the first thing we write is @media, and what we do is use this rule to specify a target media type. Now media types come right after the media rule, and there are many kinds of devices, but we can group them into 4 categories. So you've got all, which will select all types. You've got print, for printers, then you've got screen, for computer screen, tablets, anything with a screen really, and then you have speech. This is for kind of things like screen readers that read a page out loud. Now as web developers, we're most concerned with screens as our rendered output, so almost always you'll see @media with screen, so that's how you'd most likely see it. Now once we select the media type, we concatenate this, so we put an AND. Now to be honest, if we don't apply a media type, the @media rule selects all types by default. You can just have the @media rule followed by the parentheses, as it will select all the media types by default. Now after we've chosen the media type, I've just left it to default, we go inside the parentheses, and this is where we set our conditions. Now 2 very common conditions you'll see are min width and the max width properties. So when something has a min width, the width is greater than or equal to that specified condition in the media query, and max width is less than or equal to the width specified in the query. So let's look at an example to show you what I mean. So let's just say at 400 pixels we wanted our heading and our paragraph to increase its font size and change its color. So to do that we need to set a min width. So you can see here we're at 380 pixels, so we're going to set a min width, and we're going to say 400 pixels, and then we're going to set some new rules inside the curly braces. So we're going to grab the heading and we're going to change its font size to 40 pixels, and then change its color to red, and then we'll change some rules for the paragraph. So we'll say font size to be 25 pixels, and we'll change the color of this to purple. Currently we're at 380 pixels, but once the screen size is equal to or greater than 400 pixels, the new rules we just specified will come into effect. So if I grab this and we go to 400 pixels, our font size and the color for our heading and paragraph change, and that's because the minimum width now of these new rules are 400 pixels and above. So once 400 pixels is triggered, it will apply these new rules. Let's just say we want our content to be smaller and a different color underneath 350 pixels. So I'm just going to delete this rule here, so it reverts back to its original rule. Now as I mentioned, at 350 pixels or smaller, I want our content here to be a different color and different font size. So this is when we set the max width. So max width in here, and let's just say 350 pixels, and we put new rules in here. Once we hit that threshold of 350 pixels, you see the new rules come into effect. So our font size is now 20 pixels, the color is blue for the heading, and the paragraph font size is 15 pixels, and the color is orange. And that's how we can use the max width and min width in our media queries to make our content more responsive. Now one of the most commonly asked questions in CSS media queries is, which breakpoint should I use? Now a breakpoint is key to determine when to change the layout and adapt new rules inside those media queries. But because there's a ton of different devices on the market, it's impossible to say that there's a standard resolution for devices, but there are commonly used breakpoints in daily programming, so let's just take a look at some of them now. Now as you can see, these range, and as I said, these breakpoints can differ, and there's no specified standard defined, but these are some of the ranges and breakpoints we can look at. Now one major point guys before we wrap up is that always put your media queries at the end of your CSS file, and that's because CSS is a cascading style sheet, meaning that styles below another style will always take precedent, and the same applies to media queries. So let's just put this media query here above. And you can see now the rules don't apply, and we're underneath this 350 pixels, but the rules we've set in here don't apply, and they've essentially made redundant. So it's always important to put your media queries at the end of all your style sheets. But that'll be it for this video, guys. Now, responsive design is a must in today's development field, and media queries are key tools we can use to build responsive layouts. Now, I hope you found this video valuable. If you did, please hit the like button and please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next 5 Minute Fridays episode.